So, what do we do? Do we ask permission or do we go behind his back and apologize if we have to? Eleanor Lewis asked her best friend Bella Rivera as they sipped cappuccinos at the coffee shop. Bella smiled crookedly. Reason tells me to tell him ahead of time so it won't be cheating, but logic tells me he'll say no if I do. Going behind his back and not getting caught seems like the more sensible solution, she said, her long platinum blonde hair catching a ray of sunlight coming through the sunroof. The mind can be so fickle. The important thing is that you don't get caught, Eleanor replied. Though everyone seems to get caught sooner or later. You know that, don't you? Yeah, but I'm hoping that by the time that happens, I'll have enough leverage that he'll just brush it off, Bella said. Aren't you sure you want to risk this? Charles is a great guy, Eleanor said. You two have been married a long time. That's why I think he'd let me continue if he catches us, Bella replied. I don't think he'll want to give up everything we've worked so hard for. In another 10 or 15 years, we'd be able to ride off into a nice retirement sunset. It's not like he'd have to worry about me falling in love with any of these guys. I know it sounds corny, but in this case, it would really just be an affair. I believe you, sis, but men don't think like us. They can't separate love from bedtime fun when it comes to their spouses. You be walking a fine line here, Eleanor commented. I know, but I have to do this, Bella insisted. I need to feel some excitement back in my life. Bella and Eleanor had been discussing this for the past 2 months, ever since Bella confided in her friend that she felt her life had fallen into a rut and saw only one way out. I need to feel the excitement of a new relationship, Bella explained. Remember how thrilling it was in high school, college, and even right after, when boys would notice you, chase you, and then woo you. How you spent all that time getting to know each other. I need that. I miss that. I adore Charles. He's an amazing man, a great father, a good provider, and a wonderful husband. But after all these years together, we know each other so well that there's no mystery left. Like B.B. King said, the thrill is gone. I need to feel that excitement again, Eleanor. I don't want to hurt Charles, but I have to do this for myself. I need to find a way to do this while causing him the least amount of pain. Ideally, he wouldn't find out, but if he must, it should come from me. I'm not looking for a divorce. I just need a bit of excitement for a while. Then, I believe I can return to being the best wife for Charles for the rest of our lives. I don't think Charles will be able to give you that, Bella, no matter how much he loves you, Eleanor replied. I know, Bella sighed. I really need to think this through carefully, Eleanor. He was standing at the bar with another student when Bella and her 3 friends walked into the small Mexican restaurant near campus. The 4 girls sat at a table, with Bella facing the 2 young men at the bar. I've seen the shorter one around campus before, but not the tall guy with the curly hair, Bella remarked to her friends. Do any of you know him? That's Charles Rivera, the science whiz, one of them replied. He's not much of a social butterfly. He's too busy being brilliant. Everyone says he'll start out at 6 figures with one of the big chemical companies. Wow, all that plus gorgeous blue eyes and a nice body. Ladies, I think I just found my future husband. I'm going in, Bella said, getting up from the table and heading towards the young man. Charles, though not a ladies' man, was familiar enough with women, but he'd never had someone as beautiful as Bella approach him. She wore tight Levi's jeans and an Iowa State t-shirt. Trying to play it cool, he couldn't help but blatantly check her out. Smooth, really smooth. You might want to wipe that drool off your chin, science guy. I'm Bella Thompson, by the way, she said, smiling as he struggled to form a coherent response. From that moment on, they were inseparable and married a year after graduation. Bella's outgoing, direct personality brought out the best in the quiet, reserved, and incredibly intelligent Charles. Away from work, he focused entirely on being everything Bella wanted and needed. In her presence, he could discuss many topics, be glib and charming, or even forceful when necessary. After 27 years of marriage, Charles's love for his wife and his life remained undiminished. He had worked diligently to balance his career and family, and believed he had succeeded. As vice president of research for a medical equipment firm, He and Bella had raised two exceptional children who were now attending prestigious colleges. They enjoyed a beautiful home, took wonderful vacations, managed their finances wisely, and were planning to retire at 60 to travel the world while still in good health. If asked, Charles would tell anyone who would listen that his marriage was nearly perfect. Bella thought that since Patrick Collins was the one who had set her on this path, he should be the first to benefit from it. The 35-year-old had twice asked Bella to lunch, only to be turned down both times, as she was happily married. So when she asked him to dinner a few weeks later, he squinted at her for several seconds before agreeing. "What's changed? Are you and your husband on the outs or something?" he asked. Bella wasn't sure how much she wanted to reveal, so she opted for a minimal answer. "Hubby and I are good. This is something I want. And it's outside of my marriage," she said. "And since you were bold enough to ask, fortune in this case favors the bold. All I will say is that I'm at a point in my life where I want a little excitement again. I'm a wife, a mother, and a professional, but I'm also a woman with needs and feelings. I think that part of my life has been neglected for some time, and I miss the spontaneity of my younger days. Wine me, dine me. Let's see where this leads," discreetly. "Message received. Thank you for giving me dibs," Patrick said. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday night, Bella and Patrick met for dinner at a high-end Jamaican restaurant on the outskirts of the city. She had told her husband a week earlier that she had a dinner meeting with a client and would be home around 11. Since she occasionally had dinner meetings for her job at a national communications company, Charles didn't think twice, especially since he trusted his wife completely. He didn't know she had packed a change of clothes in an overnight bag and had it in her car trunk when she left for work. Patrick was taken aback by Bella's attire as she exited her car in a short, tight blue dress, quite different from her usual work attire. He gazed at her, estimating her age to be around 40 despite her lengthy tenure at the company. "You're looking stunning, Bella. Quite the change from your earlier outfit," remarked Patrick. "I thought you deserved more than just business, Bella," she replied whimsically, making air quotes with her hands. He extended his hand to her, which she accepted, and together they entered the restaurant, embodying the facade of a couple for the evening. Bella's heart raced with excitement. This was precisely why she sought companionship outside her main relationship. Seated at the table, she locked eyes with Patrick's warm, brown gaze, observing the mocha hue of his skin and imagining the toned physique beneath his business suit. A bright smile adorned her face. "Are you part Jamaican? Is that why you chose this place?" inquired Bella. "Indeed I am," he affirmed. "My British grandparents married Jamaican women. My parents reside in England. My grandmothers were exceptional cooks, creating memorable dishes. I frequent this place monthly. Jamaican cuisine is comforting and delightful. Some dancing is up next on our agenda." Bella felt her heart quicken as Patrick embraced her tightly during their slow dance. She melted into his arms, basking in the strength he exuded. It felt as though all her senses were heightened. After dancing for about 45 minutes, Patrick proposed continuing the evening at his apartment. Initially taken aback by the bold suggestion, Bella soon realized it was precisely what she desired. She flashed a radiant smile at her younger date and nodded in agreement. Just as they had arrived independently at the restaurant and club, they drove to Patrick's apartment in their separate cars. Stepping inside, Bella couldn't help but notice the anticipation coursing through her. 45 minutes later, Bella lay on the bed next to Patrick, breathing heavily and perspiring from her encounter with a man other than Charles for the first time in 28 years. She couldn't help but notice the contrast in energy between a 35-year-old man like Patrick and a 50-year-old like her husband. This was exactly what she had in mind when she had made the decision to stray from her marriage. "After a few minutes, I should clean up and change back into my casual clothes," Bella informed Patrick. As she changed and freshened up, Bella realized that the expected guilt had not hit her as strongly as she thought it would. She took it as a positive sign. When she emerged from the bathroom, Patrick awaited her, still undressed. They shared a passionate kiss before she departed, assuring him that a repeat performance would please her in the future. Returning home at 11:15, Bella swiftly apologized to Charles for the delay caused by traffic. Her husband accepted her apology, recognizing her sincerity, as she planted a quick kiss on his lips and proceeded into the bathroom. That went smoother than expected, Bella mused to herself as she made her way past. All that worrying was for naught. After a series of encounters with Patrick, Bella decided to diversify her experiences as per her plan. Although she continued seeing Patrick, another man was introduced into the mix, followed shortly by a third. Exploring relationships with all three, both in and out of the bedroom, proved to be exhilarating and fulfilling her craving for new excitement. Feeling rather pleased with her scheme, Bella found herself meeting her lovers twice a week. The novelty of engaging in different activities and discussions with new people was just as rewarding. Realizing that bedtime entertainment had become somewhat secondary, in part because her lovers were not distinctly superior to her husband, Bella pondered expanding her circle to ensure things stayed fresh. "Is that your wife?" James Davis hesitantly asked Charles as he peered at a diagram on his computer screen from behind the older man. On Charles' desk, pictures of Bella and his two children were always displayed on the left, just to the right of his monitor placed at the corner. Charles detected the uncertainty in James' voice as he observed the younger man taking a step back. Promptly, he gestured towards a chair across from his desk and urged James to sit down. Having worked with Charles for 3 years, James was well regarded by the older man, who saw a promising future for him within the company. Charles admired the 27-year-old for his good looks and respectful demeanor, envisioning him as the type of man he would approve of for his daughter to marry, should she choose to do so in the future. "Something seems amiss, James. You have the look of someone who's seen a ghost." "Oh, you have encountered a ghost, haven't you, James?" Charles remarked, his expression registering sudden realization. Seeing James lower his gaze, Charles rose to shut and lock his office door before resuming his seat, his gaze piercing through the young man, the quiet intensifying in the room. "I wasn't aware she was your wife. I truly had no idea," James confided in a hushed voice, still avoiding eye contact. "I knew she was married. She mentioned she had an understanding with her husband. I absolutely did not know she was your wife." In a swift succession of emotions, Charles transitioned from concern to anger and then to nausea. It felt as if a tumultuous storm had erupted in his composed mind, inundating him with a barrage of inquiries and reflections. "After how many instances didn't you know she was my wife?" Charles finally inquired after a brief pause. 3, no 4, James responded, reducing the actual count in an attempt to soften the blow. Fighting back tears, Charles detected James' mental calculations, suspecting him of understating the figures to alleviate Charles' distress. Following a prolonged silence, Charles eventually managed to whisper, "How? Why?" Meeting Charles' gaze, James gathered the unspoken inquiry conveyed in Charles' eyes. "We first met around 4 months ago at a bar with a dance floor. She was in the company of another man. They appeared as a couple, especially when they danced. We shared a dance or two and conversed. I inquired if they were exclusive, and she informed me they were not. She agreed to a date with me for the following week, and we have since met occasionally." Charles inquired, "So, getting together means sleeping, right?" James looked down and simply nodded. "She mentioned that you and she had an understanding. She was dating and sleeping with other men, with your knowledge," he said. "I swear I had no idea she was your wife." "I swear," James insisted. "Well, you did know she belonged to someone else," Charles pointed out. "Yeah, but she was already involved with someone. Initially, I assumed she was his wife, but I noticed he wasn't wearing a ring," James explained. James gazed directly at Charles and visibly made a decision. "Turns out she's dating several men, including me and this other guy," James whispered. "So you're saying that you not only didn't authorize this, but you were unaware?" Charles responded, "That's an accurate assessment." The two men exchanged a silent gaze. "I apologize, Charles. I'll end things with her," James promised. "I'd appreciate that. And please, don't tell her about our conversation." "I need to figure things out," Charles requested. James stood up, unlocked the door, and left quietly. Charles remained seated, staring at his computer almost aimlessly for the next hour until it was time to leave for home. He realized that things between his wife and himself had been strained for the past year. Their conversations had become sparse, she was working longer hours, and their intimacy had dwindled significantly. Questions about her well-being were met with monosyllabic responses. That night, as usual on evenings they both returned early, Bella was cooking dinner in the kitchen when Charles entered. Instead of going to her for a customary kiss before changing, he slumped in a chair at the kitchen table, his eyes glazed with tears. Bella glanced at her husband and could tell that he was aware of something. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she felt rooted in place. "How long has this been going on, Bella? Why don't you love me anymore?" Charles murmured, trying hard to suppress his emotions. Bella couldn't hold back her tears. "It's been around a year, but I do love you, baby. It's not about not loving you," she said tearfully. Charles raised his eyebrows, silently urging her to elaborate. "I crave excitement and new experiences in my life. Everything else has become secondary," Bella admitted. Charles winced. "We have been together for 28 years, with 27 of those spent in marriage. Over these countless moments, we have intimately known each other, both physically and mentally. Even as we explore new experiences, it is always with the familiarity of the same person. I sensed a need within me for freshness and vitality, a desire for new connections on an intimate level. I contemplated seeking your approval beforehand to ensure transparency, but past experiences have suggested that may not end well. So I decided to pursue it and discuss it with you now. I am aware of your love for me, and I believe that upon reflection, you will understand and grant me this, knowing that I love you just as deeply. I believe I have earned this. I have upheld my roles as a devoted wife and mother." Interrupting, Charles remarked, "While I am confident in my capabilities as a husband and father, I would never presume that I have the right to seek relationships outside of our marriage based on that." Bella's frustration simmered at the interruption, but resumed once Charles concluded his thoughts. "This isn't about my affection for you, darling, nor does it involve feelings for anyone else. I do not harbor love for them. It's simply that the dynamism between us has grown stagnant. I continue to crave, the spark of something fresh and exhilarating. For a temporary period, I longed for novelty. Once that thirst is quenched, I will return to being solely yours, forever. We can then relish in growing old together, in comfort and familiarity. Time is on our side." Bella regarded Charles with a condescending gaze, while he reciprocated with a look of bewilderment. Charles shared his perspective, saying, "Marriage is a journey, Bella. It commences with fervor and zest, with new emotions and discoveries, and gradually transitions into a tranquil, enduring comfort. Every aspect is part of an evolving experience, much akin to raising children. Seeking rejuvenation by engaging with other men is simply a means to justify your betrayal, and I refuse to accept it." Resistance flaring, Bella challenged, "You refuse to accept it. You don't dictate my choices. I will see whom I wish when I wish." Acknowledging, he responded firmly, "I may not control you, but we entered into vows together, and breaking them out of boredom is not how a marriage functions. If this is truly your desire, then you should have had the courage to seek a divorce. Since you lack that resolve, I will initiate the process." Expressing her dissent, Bella uttered, "Divorce is not what I desire. I simply seek time to sort through my thoughts." Firmly, Charles asseverated, "No, you wish to keep me as a contingency plan. You find solace in our familiarity, intending to return to the boring old Charles once your vacation is over. Date around, and when you tire, come back to me. We have been wed for 27 years. Bella's outcry continued, "Do I not deserve a modicum of consideration?" Counteracting her question, Charles questioned, "How many have you been unfaithful with, Bella? Did I not deserve any consideration?" Bella's response consisted of a huff, followed by a reflective silence. "How did you find out?" she inquired, speaking in a quieter and seemingly calmer tone than before. "First, answer my question, darling. How many men?" Charles asked. "If recalling them all is too difficult, just name the closest dozen." "Damn it, Charles," That's uncalled for, she snapped. Really, Bella? Charles retorted. I'm aware of at least 5, and given that I only found out recently, I suspect there are far more. Give me time, and I'll uncover the truth. Despite only knowing about 2 men Bella had been involved with, Charles, a skilled card player, decided to bluff by naming a definitive number after James hinted at more partners for her. Bella hesitated slightly, then settled down across from Charles. For the first time, a sense of guilt flashed across her face, and Charles, drawing from 28 years of experience, realized his bluff might be too low. She started sobbing quietly, indicating that she was done talking for the night and using her tears as a means to avoid admitting defeat. Remaining at the table with Bella for a few more minutes, Charles eventually headed upstairs to change clothes. He decided to order a pizza for himself, having a 12-pack of Thompson High Life in the fridge. As for dinner, his soon-to-be ex-wife could fend for herself. After her tears subsided, Bella sat at the table lost in contemplation. Unimportant as it seemed, she noted that Charles never divulged how he uncovered her infidelity. She made a conscious decision not to press him on this, as she was aware he could easily retaliate by probing into her own rendezvous. Although she bristled with anger when he insinuated that her liaisons could exceed a dozen, she knew his estimate was eerily accurate. Over the past 9 months of her escapades, she had been intimate with 9 men repeatedly and engaged in 3 one-night encounters. It was her ardent hope that Charles would never uncover her secret trysts. With genuine love for him, Bella harbored aspirations of revitalizing their marriage once she put an end to her dalliances. While the possibility of getting caught had always lingered at the back of her mind, she held on to the belief that Charles loved her enough to overlook her transgressions. Exceedingly grateful for his tolerance, Bella vowed to demonstrate her devotion daily by becoming the best wife she could possibly be for him. Although not entirely surprising, Bella felt a pang of hurt as Charles retreated to their son's former bedroom come bedtime. We've never spent a night apart in all our years together. Why break that streak now? We've been together while I was being unfaithful, Bella expressed. Charles looked suddenly unwell, rushing to the bathroom to vomit up his pepperoni lover's pizza. Bella dampened a cloth and left it on the counter for him before retiring to bed alone. Charles lay fitfully in their son's room through the night. The following morning, subdued silence pervaded as the couple prepared for work. Just as Charles was about to leave for his car, Bella informed him she would be home 90 minutes late due to work commitments. Her words barely left her mouth before her realization of an error set in. Oh damn, how many times did you use that excuse to see someone else? Is that what this is now? Charles inquired, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. In truth, that was precisely the case. Bella had scheduled a lunch date with a man she had met the previous week. The gravity of the situation dawned on her only as she had mentioned the late hours to her husband, a consideration that had not surfaced until the day prior. Yes, I have plans to meet someone. I apologize. I arranged this meeting last week, and I did mention late work commitments a couple of days ago, she confessed. Yes, work was often your alibi, whether it was late nights at work or meeting clients, but not all of it was false. Sometimes your work did require you to stay late, Charles acknowledged. I guess I should cancel my appointment. I didn't think. You're planning to continue seeing other men for the foreseeable future, right? Charles queried. Yes, I don't intend to stop. I had planned to continue for some time, Bella admitted. Well then, you can go ahead and be with this guy too, Charles stated starkly, causing Bella to flinch. With that, he made his way to the garage, got in his car, and drove off to work. This didn't go as expected, Bella ruminated silently to herself. Charles couldn't believe he made it to the office without an accident. The drive seemed like a blur, and suddenly he found himself in the parking lot. But once he settled at his desk, focusing on work was impossible. His mind swirled with thoughts of how many times his wife had been with other men in the past 9 months. She claimed that bedtime entertainment was of secondary importance, but he couldn't shake the feeling that she was lying, like when she'd said she was late for work. Once the trust had been broken, by 9:15, he decided to seek legal advice from a friend who specialized in family law. Securing an appointment for 5, he reasoned that since his wife wouldn't be home, he might as well use his time productively. As he sat at the kitchen table, indulging in takeout Italian, Bella arrived home and entered the kitchen. Their eyes met briefly before she headed upstairs. Charles observed her unchanged hair and makeup, indicating she had tidied up after her appointment before returning to work. When she descended in casual attire, Charles couldn't ignore the fact that she hadn't showered. In a hushed tone, he confronted her. "How many times did you give me sloppy seconds?" The revelation of her dating life to her husband, whom she couldn't bring herself to call her affairs, had a profound impact on their relationship. She recognized the look of disdain in his eyes, causing her to cringe before responding. "I should smack you," Bella exclaimed, her voice seething with anger. "You disrespectful jerk. I'd never treat you like this." Charles smirked at her outburst, relishing in causing her pain. "And just like I never thought you'd cheat on me," he retorted calmly. "You've proven that I don't know you as well as I believed." She let out a loud sigh and rolled her eyes. "Go ahead, act like the victim," she shot back. With an air of self-righteousness, he responded, "Fine, I will. You labeling me as disrespectful is the height of hypocrisy. Your lies and infidelity have been a tremendous disrespect to our marriage. Even you can't deny that." "I'm not disrespecting you. I've told you before. I'm exploring new experiences and connections," she defended. Charles spat back. "You can call it what you want, but breaking our wedding vows is disrespectful, no matter how you spin it." Bella was taken aback when divorce papers were served to her the following week on a Wednesday night. Initially shocked, her shock soon gave way to anger as she opened the familiar manila envelope on her way from the front door. "I thought you would give me the benefit of the doubt, Charles. Are you really willing to throw away 27 years because I want to try new things while you're content with aging?" Bella lamented. "What made you think I'd let you test the waters with other men for a year and still expect us to remain married? Do I look like I've had a lobotomy?" Charles responded calmly. "Why can't you understand that this is about exploring new opportunities and people, not about disrespecting you?" she argued. "And yet most of your dates end the same way, don't they?" Charles observed. Shocked, she questioned, "How do you know that?" "I didn't know until now, but men are predictable. If a certain option is on the menu, they'll order it," he remarked. Frustrated, Bella walked away. With her dating life no longer a secret, she felt emboldened to return home later, even past midnight after subsequent outings. To her surprise and annoyance, Charles was waiting for her when she arrived, mirroring how he waited up for their children when they were out on dates. "Have you ever tried line dancing? It was so much fun last night," Bella mentioned to Charles over breakfast before they headed to work. His eyebrows shot up in surprise at this unexpected revelation. "So now you're sharing details of your dates with me? How delightful. Was the bed comfortable too?" he snidely asked. A smirk crossed her face as she responded, "Indeed, usually quite comfortable. But here's the thing, dear. She's always soft," Charles pointed out. "You can deny it all you want, but that's the key issue. It makes you nothing but a why we're headed for a divorce." "This won't end in divorce, Charles." "So you say, Bella." After waiting a week, Charles called his children to break the news of the divorce. He was taken aback by Layla's insights. She appeared well-informed and seemed to be siding with her mother in the split. "Can't you see that she still loves you and might return?" Layla tried to reason with him. "For me, eventually is too late," Charles responded. "I can't accept sharing my wife. The fact that she has been involved with multiple men for almost a year indicates her love for me isn't as deep as she claims." "You shared 27 wonderful years, and she still cares for you, Dad," Layla insisted. "She just wants some new experiences. You are content with the way things are. Please don't let her pursuit of different paths be the end for both of you." "But she's being unfaithful," Charles stated firmly. "I can't turn a blind eye to that. We made vows to be faithful till death do us part." "After being an outstanding wife and mother for 27 years, doesn't she deserve some leniency?" Layla pressed on. "What do you gain from divorcing her? Living alone in a dull apartment for the rest of your life. Staying with her could earn you her lifetime commitment, with her doing everything to make you happy. Shouldn't she reciprocate the same level of devotion I have shown her? Charles questioned. I have stayed true to my vows, even when it would have been just as simple to break them as she did. Are you truly backing her actions? Does Nate even know about your support for this? Charles questioned. I might have to check in with him to see how he feels. I trust you wouldn't do that to me, Dad. That's crossing a line, Layla replied. Just wait and see. Nate deserves to know what's going on and your perspective, as it'll affect him down the line, Charles insisted. Daddy, please, Layla pleaded. I'd never do that to Nate. Then why do you support Mom doing it to me? Charles challenged. If you find this acceptable, you might do it to your husband one day. Do you find this behavior acceptable? Charles pressed. Layla hesitated, confirming Charles' suspicions. When Bella and Charles' son, Ed, learned about the divorce and Charles' reasons, he fully supported his father. I never thought she'd go this far, Dad, Ed remarked, firmly backing his father's stance. A week later, on a Saturday night, Bella sat on the living room sofa, watching her husband in his La-Z-Boy on the other side of the room. It suddenly struck her that it had been months, perhaps even weeks, since they had cuddled on the sofa or shared a hug or a kiss. Caught up in her own pursuits, she hadn't noticed the absence of intimacy with Charles. She wondered why he hadn't brought it up or made a move. Charles, honey, why don't you come over here and we can snuggle, maybe have some fun? It's been a while, right? You're not too old for that kind of thing, are you? Bella suggested. I'm okay, darling. I still enjoy being intimate, but ever since I discovered you were unfaithful, I can't bring myself to touch you. I got myself tested too after finding out about your infidelity. Dr. Victoria seemed quite surprised, Charles revealed. Oh, my goodness. You went to Dr. Victoria. What will he think? That you've been unfaithful. Yes, I think he got the message loud and clear, Charles replied. No, Bella moaned. Just once, could you think about someone other than yourself? This will spread throughout town soon enough, if it hasn't already. Now you've revealed yourself as a cuckold, darling. Quasera Sarah, Charles said tonelessly. I didn't want to take any risks knowing you're being reckless. You've already shattered my heart. I didn't need another part of me broken as well. You're something else, you know that. Bella hissed. So we're done sleeping together. Can you handle that? With a growl, she stormed out of the room. Bella's most recent flame declared, I love married women, with enthusiasm. You try to blame everything on your husband, but deep down, you just want some excitement on the side. Bella's companion failed to notice her frown at his comment. The man was just 25 years old. Bella reclined on her back and peered at, what was his name again? Gregory Morris. Even though she found him handsome, Bella admitted there was nothing extraordinary about him. His physique was average, he danced well, but conversationally, he lacked depth unless it revolved around baseball. Every single one of Bella's encounters eventually led to the bedroom. She often rationalized that these rendezvous were about exploring new connections, but in reality, they were simply escapades with unfamiliar partners. Mulling over her actions, Bella contemplated the idea of rekindling things with her husband. The challenge, however, was how to approach the situation. The major hurdle to reconnecting with Charles was his reluctance to be intimate with Bella since discovering her infidelity. Though she believed Charles still harbored feelings for her, winning him back would be far easier if they could share a bed again. How do I get him back between the sheets? He sequestered himself in Ed's room and is as abstinent as a monk, Bella confided in Eleanor Lewis during a lunch discussion. I bet his right hand has calluses from. Eleanor interjected, saying, You could be in a real mess, girlfriend, if you can't bring him back to bed. I thought you had a backup plan. I thought being together for 28 years was a solid contingency. We had a wonderful marriage. Bella trailed off, questioning her past actions. If your marriage was so great, why jeopardize it? Many women would envy having a spouse like Charles, Eleanor pointed out. I was naive, thinking I was clever enough to have it all. I still can't figure out how he found out, Bella confessed. It's too late to dwell on that now, Eleanor responded. Charles was unfamiliar with the lifestyle of a bachelor after being out of practice for so long. Initially, his days were consumed by work, and his evenings consisted of returning to a solitary apartment to whip up a meal of frozen pizza or Pop-Tarts. As time passed, he began to explore a new world with a group of friends, discovering single professionals in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Observing his peers, Charles noticed that many middle-aged men were drawn towards younger women in their 20s and 30s. While he understood the appeal, he also recognized a surplus of older women who seemed overlooked. Some attractive older women found companionship with younger men, similar to what his ex-wife had done. However, there were still plenty of decent-looking women available, as indicated by the absence of wedding rings on their left hands. Charles always made it a point to check for a ring to avoid causing the same pain that had been inflicted on him. During a conversation one evening, Tom, one of his friends, argued, "Just because she's married doesn't mean she's off limits. She might just be seeking some enjoyment. What harm could it do?" Charles disagreed, stating, "She belongs to someone else, Tom. That's where the problem lies. I refuse to participate in betraying someone's trust. I've experienced the pain of infidelity, and I won't inflict it on another person." Despite what some of his friends labeled as his peculiar standards, Charles discovered there were plenty of single women available. Some sought a serious relationship, while others were interested in more casual encounters. Charles was open to spending time with both groups and had several flings over the following year. Charles harbored doubts about ever finding a love as profound as the one he had shared with Bella during their 28-year marriage. Before Bella's desire for exploration changed things, Charles believed their relationship was close to perfect. Admitting to himself that finding someone akin to the original Bella was likely an unattainable feat. Sitting alone at a table meant for five, Stella Murphy kept a close eye on the drinks, mindful of potential drink spiking in a world where women had to be vigilant. Charles decided to approach her and introduce himself. Guessing she was a few years younger than him, with either a deep tan or a mixed-race background, shoulder-length straight black hair, and expressive, large brown eyes, he observed her subtly moving to the music. "Mind if I join you?" Charles asked, pointing to the vacant seat beside her. "Please do," she responded with a warm smile. "It's nice to have someone to converse with. Quite the change from babysitting the youngsters tonight." As Charles settled into the seat, she explained, "It's girls' night out for the young ones in the office. I'm here to ensure everyone gets home safely. I'm the only one who didn't have to show ID to enter. Stella Murphy, by the way." Amused, Charles introduced himself, remarking about how it had been ages since someone had asked for his ID. The conversation between Charles and Stella was interrupted as three younger women returned to the table from the dance floor, all smiling at him and taking seats. Stella briefly paused the conversation to introduce everyone. Each of the 20-somethings greeted him politely. "Wonder where Mary Jo went off to?" Stella inquired after the introductions. "She's in the ladies' room after the last dance," one young redhead seated next to Charles replied. "Let's give her a few minutes, and then someone should check on her," Stella directed the group, scanning their faces. "Got it, Mom," one of the girls acknowledged. "I've never lost track of any of them at a girls' night out. Not starting tonight," she assured Charles. "That's commendable. Do you accompany them all the time?" he asked. "If it's a night out for the girls, then yes. But when they go out on their own, well, they're independent. I'm just the old mother hen after a divorce. 2 drinks maximum, then I switch to iced tea," she chuckled. "Does Mom ever get a chance to dance?" Charles inquired with a smile, causing Stella to blush. "Not often enough, we reckon," the redhead replied as the others grinned. "So, you all don't mind if I take her out for a bit, if she agrees," Charles proposed. Stella gave a nod of approval, and the younger women encouraged the pair onto the dance floor. Charles noticed Stella's curvaceous figure hidden beneath her understated outfit. Despite not being the best dancer, Charles boldly led in a slow dance, holding her closely. She enjoyed the closeness and strength in his arms. Charles, too, relished the moment. With Stella's phone number secured and a date set for the following Friday, Charles bid farewell. "Well done, Mom. one of the younger women complimented as they left the bar. Bella decided to pause her dating life until the divorce was finalized, hoping that it might convince Charles to reconsider ending the marriage. She expressed her frustration and anger towards Charles for not willing to reconcile after years of marriage. "You betrayed me, first in secret and then blatantly, without thinking about me, my feelings, or the consequences of your actions. What were you thinking, Bella?" Charles reproached her when she pleaded for reconciliation. "It didn't mean anything. I just wanted to break away from the monotony, to experience something new." "Our relationship had become stagnant," she explained. "It meant something to me, Bella. If you truly cared for me, you should have sought a divorce first before being unfaithful, you egocentric woman," he retorted angrily. Stella empathized with Charles, knowing he needed time to trust another partner with his heart after his past experiences. Having divorced a cheating spouse a decade ago, she had faced similar struggles. Charles was touched by Stella's nurturing demeanor towards her younger coworkers, a reflection of her inherent motherly instincts despite not having children of her own. More than a year after their first date, the couple had a modest wedding, with Charles proposing just 6 months into their relationship, confident that Stella would safeguard his heart forever. Charles's son served as his best man, while one of Stella's coworkers from their initial meeting was the maid of honor. Although Charles's daughter initially harbored reservations about her father remarrying, she eventually recognized that Stella was the ideal match. Following the ceremony, Layla, Charles's daughter, entrusted Stella with these words, "Take care of him, and Dad will love you forever. He's as loyal as a street Bernard." Over a decade later, the couple retired and embarked on a journey around the country, cherishing time with their grandchildren and immersing themselves in ballroom dance classes and local events. The bond between them remained strong, and they rarely spent time apart. Once Bella finalized her divorce, she resumed dating multiple men, feeling like she had nothing left to lose. While she was still considered attractive for her age, entering her 50s meant that her dates were no longer the handsome men she used to attract. Now single, Bella took advantage of the freedom to have overnights and even spend full weekends with her current romantic interests. Despite her reluctance to admit it, engaging in these relationships filled her time. "I miss him every day," she confided in her friend Eleanor Lewis during a lunch 5 years after the divorce. "I know you warned me. I should have been content with the good man I had. I regret my foolish actions. I was a stupid, stupid whore." She didn't even realize that she had actually deprived herself of everything that had once been dear and important to her. It was the silent revenge of karma. Her life was effectively ruined, and it would never be the same again. The second story. Admittedly, it had been a challenging year, not just for Samantha, my wife, but for all of us. For years, I worked for a company specializing in custom fasteners for manufacturers. When a company creates a product, they can't just go to the local hardware store and buy screws. Everything has to be made to their specifications. Beginning in sales, I steadily climbed the ladder to become the sales manager. It was a rewarding position, both professionally and financially. Meeting all 4 quarterly quotas, which I consistently did, ensured a substantial year-end bonus, often pushing my earnings well beyond the 6-figure mark. Despite the growing competition from overseas manufacturers, I led a dedicated sales team that consistently outperformed previous years. About a year ago, a sudden meeting summoned all company executives, myself included. Shockingly, we learned that the company's owner was retiring and had been in clandestine negotiations with a California conglomerate for a buyout. We were being sold off. The arrival of a new CEO brought promises of job security and continuity in management, promises that quickly proved false. Within a mere 2 months, the company began a wave of layoffs. Sensing the impending changes, I began actively seeking new employment, but the inevitable came before I secured another position. With a handshake and a modest severance check of $10,000, I found myself escorted out the door. Initially, Samantha and I remained relatively optimistic, but as the months elapsed, I began to grasp the shifts in the economy that had occurred during my tenure in my comfortable job. Not only had much of the manufacturing relocated overseas, but even many domestic firms were sourcing their fasteners internationally. I pondered over how we managed to maintain our resilience amidst such changes, but dwelling on that was a luxury I could no longer afford. I needed to secure employment. During this period, our 17-year-old son, Donald, was graduating from high school. His decision to enlist in the military immediately after graduation elicited mixed emotions for me. With the ongoing turmoil in the Middle East, concerns for his safety loomed large, and naturally, both Samantha and I anticipated missing him terribly. On the other hand, there was a sense of relief knowing that we wouldn't have to bear the financial burden of college expenses, which frankly, we couldn't afford. Around 5 months post-termination, it became increasingly evident that finding another six-figure job would be challenging. I adjusted my expectations and began considering positions with lower salaries. Meanwhile, Samantha decided to seek employment as well. Surprisingly, she secured a job before I did, landing a position as a junior secretary at a software company. Though the pay was modest, it exceeded what I received from unemployment benefits, providing some relief during our financial strain. About a month after Samantha landed her job, I secured a sales position at Enright Automotive, a company specializing in aftermarket car parts. During the initial couple of months, I earned a nominal salary while undergoing training. Subsequently, I transitioned to a compensation structure consisting of both salary and commission. Realistically, it was never going to be a lucrative position. The highest paid salesman in the company had been there for 12 years and barely made $60,000 annually. The strain on our finances was palpable. We were accustomed to the trappings of affluence: a comfortable home with a solid mortgage, 2 BMW sedans, only one of which was fully paid off, mine, a 5-year-old BMW 5 Series, and a collection of credit cards, most of which were already maxed out. Moreover, Samantha and I sorely missed our evenings out on the town. It was a cherished aspect of our lifestyle, a testament to the notion that enjoying life was just as important as financial success. We used to frequent restaurants with friends, indulge in dancing, catch shows, plays, or concerts whenever the mood struck us. Our outings weren't scheduled date nights. Rather, we spontaneously embraced opportunities for enjoyment, typically 2 or 3 times a month, sometimes even more frequently. Regrettably, one of the first casualties of our financial cutbacks was our social life. The adjustment seemed to weigh heavier on Samantha than on me. Unlike me, who only began to enjoy outings in college, Samantha had grown up accustomed to frequent socializing with her family, making the transition particularly difficult for her. Months had passed since our last night out, and Samantha's frustration was mounting. She couldn't bear another evening cooped up at home. About 3 months ago, she finally voiced her discontent. "Calvin, we have to do something. I can't stand another night stuck at home. I want to go out and have fun like we used to." Samantha's plea couldn't have come at a worse time. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through our bills, attempting to slowly but surely climb out of our financial hole. "Sure, no problem," I responded sarcastically, gesturing towards the stack of bills. "Just tell me which of these we shouldn't pay." Her glare pierced through me. For a moment, I thought she might explode, but she remained silent, her thoughts guarded. Almost immediately, I regretted my tone. "I'm sorry, honey," I apologized. "I promise this won't last forever. I'm still searching for a better job. In the meantime, we just need to tighten our belts a bit." "Tighten our belts," she snapped back. "Calvin, it's been nearly a year. I feel like I'm suffocating. I need to breathe to have some fun." "I understand, honey, I do," I reassured her, attempting to soothe her frustrations. "But look, we're making progress. 5 months ago, we missed a mortgage payment and almost lost your car to repossession. With this month's commission check, we'll be nearly caught up. Just give it a little more time." Samantha's expression remained tense. She wasn't convinced, and I couldn't blame her. Then, an idea struck me. "What if we go to Lincoln Park Zoo this weekend?" I suggested eagerly. "It's free, and we haven't been there since Donald was little." "I don't want nature, Calvin. I want nightlife," she retorted sharply. "I want to dine, drink, and dance until I can't feel my feet." "Honey, please," I pleaded, "just a bit longer. Once we're caught up, we'll celebrate with a nice dinner out, I promise. Silently, she retreated upstairs, leaving me to mull over the situation. A heavy sigh escaped me. I truly felt remorseful. However, the reality of our financial constraints lingered in my mind. Living in Chicago meant that a simple night out, with parking and dinner for two, easily amounted to a couple $100s, if not more. Raised in a household where prioritizing bills was paramount, I couldn't justify such expenditure while we struggled to stay afloat, barely managing the minimum payments on our credit cards each month. It took me another 10 minutes to wrap up my tasks. As I contemplated watching the news, the thought of Samantha upstairs prompted me to check on her first. Entering our bedroom, I found her perched on the edge of the bed, tears streaming down her face. Guilt washed over me as I sat down beside her, pulling her close. "I'm sorry, babe. I'm trying my best," I murmured, resting my cheek against the top of her head. "I know," she sniffled. "It's just been such a tough year, and now with Donald gone, we should be planning weekend getaways. Instead, we're stuck here. It's almost like being imprisoned. I thought debtor's prison was a thing of the past," she scoffed bitterly. It was unfortunate that she didn't notice the simmering anger on my face as she spoke. Our house, labeled as a prison, elicited a visceral reaction within me. I never wanted to purchase it in the first place. It felt too extravagant and burdensome. However, once Samantha laid eyes on it, she insisted on making it ours. Now, as I struggled to maintain it amidst financial turmoil, hearing her refer to it in such disparaging terms stung deeply. I faced a choice: confront her about her analogy or simply walk away. I opted for the latter. In the following months, tensions between Samantha and me escalated. Our conversations dwindled, becoming terse and devoid of meaning. We found ourselves occupying separate spaces within our own home more frequently. Samantha didn't hold back her dissatisfaction with me, particularly regarding our lack of outings. I understood her desire for a reprieve, but I couldn't ignore our precarious financial situation. I agreed that we both needed a release, but I insisted on prioritizing our bills before indulging in leisure activities. Despite my promises of a future night out, her discontent persisted. Tensions reached a tipping point one Friday evening after work. I returned home in unusually high spirits, having just sealed a promising contract. With the commission awaiting me at month's end, I looked forward to treating my beloved wife to a memorable evening. However, before I could share the news, I was met with an unexpected sight. As I entered, Samantha descended the staircase, exquisitely dressed to the nines. "Wow," I remarked, taking in her appearance. "What's the occasion?" "I'm heading out with some coworkers," she replied, her tone tinged with sarcasm. "Don't worry, they're footing the bill." Instantly, a sense of unease washed over me. Something felt off. While I had never doubted Samantha's fidelity, her choice of attire and the mention of her friends covering expenses didn't sit right. My wife was a woman of pride, unlikely to accept such generosity without cause. It didn't align with her character to accept charity from others. The possibility of her rendezvousing with another man lingered in the back of my mind, causing a chill to run down my spine. And who exactly are these girls? Can you at least tell me their names?" I pressed, my concern evident in my tone. She shrugged off my question with a dismissive wave. "Just some coworkers from the office. You wouldn't know them." "That's not the point, Samantha," I countered, frustration creeping into my voice. "You don't dress like that for a casual outing with girlfriends. Who are you meeting? Do you have a date with someone else?" "Don't be ridiculous," she retorted casually. "I already told you it's just a girls' night out. If you're going to be paranoid, that's your problem, not mine." At that moment, a car horn sounded from outside. Peering through the window, I spotted a cab waiting in our driveway. "You're taking a taxi?" "Yes, I plan to have a good time tonight. We both know we can't afford a DUI, so I thought it was the sensible choice." "And let me guess," I snapped, my anger rising. "Your friends are footing the bill for that too." "As a matter of fact, yes, they are," she confirmed, leaning in to give me a quick peck on the cheek. "There are leftovers from last night in the fridge. You can heat them up for dinner. I might be out late, so don't bother waiting up." With those words, she breezed out the door, leaving me seething with frustration. As Samantha slipped into the back seat of the car, I couldn't discern anyone else accompanying her. Denial briefly consumed me. Despite the evident tension between us, I couldn't fathom the notion of my wife actually meeting another man. We had a son, a life built together. She wouldn't betray that, I reassured myself. It simply couldn't be true. While I mechanically reheated leftovers in the microwave, a storm of doubt brewed within me. I desperately wanted to believe Samantha was merely enjoying a night out with her coworkers, but reality gnawed at my resolve. Driven by a growing sense of unease, I turned to the computer and swiftly located the number for the taxi service. Upon reaching the dispatcher, I requested the destination of the cab that had just departed from my residence, providing my address as reference. Surprisingly, the dispatcher didn't raise any privacy concerns, readily disclosing the information. Plato's Place, 3560 Elmhurst Road. My heart sank. I knew the establishment all too well. Samantha and I had dined there on a couple of occasions. It was a romantic restaurant with an intimate bar area, dimly lit and secluded, certainly not the setting for a casual evening with girlfriends. No, Plato's Place was the kind of place where a man would take a woman to woo her, to seduce her. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, shattering my illusions of innocence. As the buzzer signaled the completion of my dinner, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. Weren't husbands and wives supposed to unite in times of hardship, not betray each other? I toyed with the idea of dining alone at Plato's Place, contemplating my next move. The establishment boasted 2 entrances, one for the lounge and another for the restaurant. Opting for the lounge entrance to bypass the hostess, I bypassed the bar, uninterested in a drink, and headed straight for the dining area. A quick scan of the room confirmed my worst fears. There sat my wife, accompanied by another man. Though her back was turned, her silhouette was unmistakable. They conversed over appetizers, a bottle of wine already adorning the table. Rage simmered within me as I fixed my gaze upon the interloper attempting to woo my wife. With purposeful strides, I closed the distance between us. As I approached, the man, Mr. Slick, as I mentally dubbed him, suddenly halted mid-sentence, his demeanor shifting to one of apprehension. Our eyes met, and his nervousness was palpable. Just as I drew within a few feet, Samantha glanced over her shoulder, her expression morphing from surprise to guilt as she beheld my presence. "Calvin," she exclaimed, taken aback, "what are you doing here?" "I came to meet your girlfriends," I retorted bitterly, "and who's the jerk?" "Hey," he interjected, beginning to rise from his seat. "Go ahead, make a move," I warned, my voice dripping with threat. "You know damn well she's married, but I guess that doesn't matter to you, does it?" He hesitated, caught between standing and sitting, while my wife attempted to diffuse the tension. "Calvin, please, let's not make a scene," she pleaded. "This is Keith. He's a coworker. Since he won't take me out," he offered. "He was just trying to be kind." "Kind? My foot," I growled. "He's just trying to get in your pants." Eyeing Keith once more, I could tell he thought better of challenging me, sinking back into his seat. "Your night's over," I informed my wife firmly. She hesitated briefly, but like Keith, she opted not to test my resolve any further. "I apologize for this," she said to Keith as she stood up. As I led her out of the restaurant, I could feel the weight of every gaze upon us. Not a word was exchanged during the tense car ride home, but the moment we stepped into the house, the air crackled with tension. "What was that all about, Samantha? Tell me. Have you suddenly decided I'm no longer worthy of being your husband?" I demanded, my voice laced with anger. "No, of course not. I just wanted to have some fun for a change," she replied defensively. "Who is this Keith? How long have you been seeing each other?" I interrogated, my frustration mounting. "He's just a coworker, and we haven't been seeing each other. We've had lunch a few times, that's all. I mentioned missing going out, and he offered to take me for dinner and dancing. So I accepted. So sue me," she retorted sarcastically. "I can't believe this," I muttered, feeling stunned. "I thought our marriage was stronger than this. Are you ready to bail on me at the first sign of trouble?" "Who said anything about bailing? I work too, you know. I deserve to enjoy myself once in a while. If you won't take me out, why should I turn down someone who will?" she shot back, her tone defiant. Because you're my wife, damn it. I raised my voice, my frustration boiling over. We're supposed to be a team. She didn't respond, but the disdain in her expression was evident. Is this what our marriage has come to? Do I have to worry about who you're with when you're out of my sight? What were your intentions for the end of the night? Were you planning to sleep with him? I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. Of course not, she replied abruptly, her tone firm. I gazed at the woman who had been my partner for nearly 2 decades, and for the first time, doubt clouded my perception of her integrity. I don't believe you, I uttered firmly. You deceived me about going out with girlfriends, showing little concern when I doubted you then. Why should I trust you now? Yes, it's been a challenging year, but a wife is supposed to stand by her husband. Remember our vows? For richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. In that moment, clarity washed over me like a wave. Our marriage is over, I declared, the words heavy with finality. Her response was dismissive. Don't be absurd, she scoffed. We're broke, remember? You can't afford a lawyer, let alone a divorce. Hell, you can't even afford to move out. I longed to deliver a cutting rejoinder, but I was too stunned to formulate a coherent response. It seems some people were ill-equipped to confront adversity. It was evident that she no longer loved or respected me. After 19 years, my marriage had disintegrated in the blink of an eye. Anger surged within me, stifling any urge to break down and weep. Without another word, I ascended the stairs to begin packing a suitcase. After a tense 10 minutes, Samantha finally approached, her voice sharp with accusation. What's this? She demanded, eyeing my packed suitcase. Oh, I see. You can't take me out to dinner, but you can afford a night in a motel. Fine. Her words rang out as she stormed out of the room. Enright Automotive outsourced much of its inventory production overseas, but we still had some items manufactured in-house. Adjacent to the offices was a small plant, complete with a spacious shower room for the workers to freshen up before heading home, and a couch in the reception area. A shower and a place to sleep, that's all I needed for now. As I descended the stairs with my suitcase, Samantha was in the kitchen. She called out as she heard the door open, but I didn't pause to listen. I hastily threw my clothes into the car and departed without a word. I hadn't even gone a mile down the street before my phone began to ring incessantly. Strapped in with my seatbelt, I couldn't reach it, so I let it go to voicemail. Yet my curiosity got the better of me, and as soon as I arrived at the office, I retrieved my phone from my pocket, pondering what Samantha might have to say. Calvin, you're being childish, her voice echoed through the voicemail. I told you I had no intention of sleeping with Keith, and I meant it. Now get your ass back home. It was far from the apology and plead for reconciliation I had expected. I decided to leave most of my belongings in the car. No need to advertise my personal turmoil to everyone at work. It was still early, so I retreated to the break room, hoping to distract myself with some TV. Yet my troubles weighed heavily on my mind, rendering any attempt at diversion futile. I couldn't shake the nagging thought of what might have transpired if I hadn't intervened at the restaurant. Would Samantha truly have returned home after a night of dancing? The uncertainty gnawed at me, exacerbated by my distrust of that slimy Keith. He didn't strike me as the type to give up easily. I could envision him relentlessly pursuing her until he got what he wanted. Frustrated with my futile attempts to occupy myself, I eventually resigned to setting an early alarm, allowing me to shower and dress before the factory workers began arriving at 7. As I lay in bed, wrestling with my thoughts, I pondered my next steps. Samantha was correct. I lacked the financial means for a lawyer or even a new apartment. I needed to devise a plan. Yet her blatant disregard for our marriage and for me personally left me with a resolve not to grovel back home with my tail between my legs. I was pleasantly surprised when the alarm roused me from sleep the next morning. I couldn't believe I managed to rest so well on that uncomfortable couch. It felt more like a medieval torture device. After a quick shower and dressing, I headed to a nearby restaurant for a leisurely breakfast. As I sat sipping my 4th cup of coffee, a sudden epiphany struck me like lightning. The solution to my predicament seemed so obvious, yet it had eluded me until now. Returning to Enright's parking lot, I pulled out my cell phone and snapped a photo. Once seated at my desk, I wasted no time in running the ad. 2 days later, I took the afternoon off to attend to some errands. With Samantha at work, I seized the opportunity to retrieve the necessary documents from our personal filing cabinet at home, grabbing the spare set of keys on my way out. Later that day, I checked into a motel and dialed Samantha's number. As soon as she heard my voice, she launched into a tirade. "It's about time. Are you done with your little hissy fit now? I can't believe you couldn't find the money to take me out to dinner, but you can stay in a motel for 2 days." Samantha scolded as soon as she answered the phone. "Actually," I interjected, cutting her off, "I stayed at the office." "The office?" "Yeah, they have a shower, a nice comfortable couch, and a TV room, all the comforts of home," I replied, stretching the truth. Her response was more of the same. "Well, that's just ridiculous. Stop being so stubborn and come home." "I'm not coming home, Samantha. I've made it clear our marriage is over. I called to let you know you'll need a ride home." "What? Why? What's wrong with the car?" "Nothing," I answered calmly. "It drives like a dream, better than mine." There was a moment of silence as she processed my words. "Calvin, what are you talking about?" "I sold my car, got 18 grand for it. That's more than enough to get a lawyer started on the divorce and a down payment on an apartment. And since both cars are in my name, I took yours. I stopped by the house earlier today and got the titles to both cars and the spare keys to yours." "Calvin," she shrieked in disbelief. "You can't do that. What am I supposed to drive?" "Actually, since both cars are in my name, I can do that. I didn't take anything out of the accounts. All the bills are paid for the month, so there wasn't much left. But if you budget, you should have plenty for food and cab fare. And if you run low, I'm sure Keith will be more than happy to take you out for dinner, providing you give him what he wants, of course." Suddenly, Samantha's tone shifted to one of remorse and pleading. "Calvin, please don't do this. Hi, I never thought you'd really go this far. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gone out with Keith, but I was angry. Honestly, nothing was going to happen." "Samantha, you lied to me, went on a date with another man behind my back, and then treated me with disdain and showed absolutely no remorse when I caught you. Admit it, Samantha, you don't love or respect me. You made that plain as day with the way you talked to me the other night." "Calvin, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry too, Samantha. We had a good run when life was easy, but when things got tough, we let each other down," I replied, my voice tinged with resignation. He was taken aback by a sob from the other end of the line, but it made no difference anymore. I pressed on. "The house is in both our names. It's our one decent asset, so it needs to be sold as quickly as possible," I explained, hearing her gasp. "Sell the house. Calvin, do we have to?" she pleaded. "Samantha, right now, we're up to date with the mortgage, but I'm not making any more house payments, and there's no way you can cover them every month. Yes, it has to be sold immediately. I estimate we each should be able to walk away with 50 or 60,000 each. You can use that to buy yourself a decent used car and find an apartment." "Calvin, I don't want a divorce. Please, can't we talk about this?" she implored. "Sorry, Samantha, it's no longer about what you want. Now do you want to call a realtor, or should I?" Epilogue. Samantha stood on the sidewalk outside her apartment, her gaze drifting up to the gray sky as a flock of geese honked their way northward, a reassuring sign that spring was on its way. She navigated through the melting slush, making her way to her 10-year-old Chrysler, and headed towards Starbucks to meet an old friend. The anticipation of seeing Chloe brought a smile to Samantha's face. It had been a typical Chicago winter, cold temperatures, abundant snow, and treacherous roads, keeping Samantha mostly confined to her apartment when she wasn't at work. Inside Starbucks, Chloe had already claimed a small table in the corner, savoring her latte. Samantha greeted her friend with a kiss on the cheek before joining the line for her own Colombian brew. As she waited, Samantha relished the chance to catch up with a friend, appreciating the opportunity to step out and enjoy some company. Returning to the table with her coffee, Samantha was met with a warm smile and a familiar voice, brightening her day even more. Samantha, it's so good to see you. It's been a while, Chloe greeted, her voice filled with warmth. Yes, it has. Too long, Samantha replied, a hint of melancholy in her tone. I don't get out much anymore. Why's that? You were the life of the party back in the day. Yeah, well, life was simpler then. I don't have the money for outings like I used to. What about dates? Remember those? Going out with a handsome man who foots the bill, Chloe teased. Samantha chuckled lightly. It's a bit of a catch-22. Can't meet men if you don't go out, but can't afford to go out if you're not with a man. What about guys at work? Dweebs and married men, nothing exciting, Samantha countered. Let's change the subject, it's a bit depressing. How are the kids? Oh, they're thriving. Lucas Jr. just got a promotion, and Emily is already in her 3rd year of college. They grow up so fast, don't they? They really do, Samantha agreed. Donald has 1 more year in the military, and he's already considering re-enlisting. He enjoys it. How's your husband? Lucas is doing well, as hardworking as ever. Samantha noticed the hesitant look on her friend's face. What's up? Oh, nothing, Chloe replied, looking a bit sheepish. Come on, spill it. You were about to ask me something. Well, I was just curious if you've seen Calvin lately. No, not since we finalized the divorce, Samantha said, reminiscing for a moment. Wow, that was 2 years ago already. Why do you ask? I just wondered. I'm not sure if I should tell you, but I think you should hear it from a friend. What is it, Chloe? Is everything okay with him? Yeah, he's fine. I bumped into him the other day, and well, he's getting married again. Even though she had long accepted the end of their relationship, the news still hit Samantha hard. She felt a lump form in her throat as tears threatened to spill over. I guess I'm not surprised, she admitted quietly, her voice heavy with sorrow. He's a good man. Her gaze fell to her hands, fidgeting with the coffee cup. Sometimes I look back at what we had, and I wonder how I could have been so blind. Taking a sip of her coffee, she lifted her eyes to meet her friend's gaze. I did love him, you know. Truly, I did. But when the bills piled up and the stress mounted, I lost sight of what mattered. I just wanted an escape from our problems, a bit of fun. Chloe listened in silence, offering her presence and understanding. Calvin was right about everything, Samantha continued, her voice tinged with regret. I lost respect for him, maybe even stopped loving him for a while. It wasn't fair. Losing his job wasn't his fault, and he was doing everything he could to keep us afloat. She paused, a pang of guilt washing over her. I remember when he suggested we go to the zoo one weekend, but I brushed him off, insisting on my night out instead. He was even right about Keith, Samantha admitted, a sense of remorse evident in her voice as she recounted the painful memories. That was the guy he caught me having dinner with. Calvin asked if I had plans to sleep with him, and I did. Chloe, I had every intention of doing just that. Chloe's expression softened, her empathy palpable. Oh, Samantha. Yeah, I know. Samantha sighed heavily, her regret weighing heavily on her. Believe me, Chloe, if I could go back and do things differently, I would. Is he still in that little apartment he moved into? Chloe hesitated, unsure how to broach the topic. Actually, no. You didn't hear, she began cautiously. What now? Did he hit the jackpot or something? Samantha asked, half-jokingly. Chloe shook her head. Not quite, but he did get his old job back at Vans. It happened a few months after your divorce was finalized. Apparently, they started losing customers after they let Calvin go, so they reached out to him and he eventually accepted. And get this, he's making more now than he ever did. A tear slipped down Samantha's cheek as Chloe finished speaking. I'm sorry, honey. I shouldn't have brought it up. No, Samantha replied, shaking her head. It's my own fault. There have been so many nights where I've wished I could turn back time, prayed for the last 2 years to just be a bad dream. But then I wake up and face reality again. She wiped away her tears with a napkin. I genuinely am happy for him. Please, tell him that for me if you see him again, okay? I will, honey, Chloe promised, her voice filled with sympathy. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, and the friends enjoyed each other's company. But as Samantha drove away and the facade faded, she couldn't hold back her tears any longer, breaking down in the solitude of her car. The third story. The unfamiliar patron sidled up to the bar, settling onto a stool and requesting a draft beer. It was a quiet afternoon, affording the bartender some respite from the usual hustle. Pausing from wiping down the bar, the stranger broke the silence. "Hey, ever seen this guy?" He flashed his phone, displaying a somewhat grainy image evidently snapped of another picture. As incentive, he slipped a $20 bill onto the counter. The bartender scrutinized the photo, pinching to zoom in until the face came into focus, albeit a bit blurred. Might ring a bell. Why the interest? He wasn't about to fib for anyone, yet divulging information about a potential acquaintance required justification. The stranger met the bartender's gaze thoughtfully, opting for candor. "His name's David Howard. He's my brother-in-law. My sister, his wife, has been on the hunt for him for ages. They had a falling out, and he vanished out of the blue. We were partners in a business venture, and I only got wind of trouble when he left me a voicemail, urging me not to reach out. Since then, she and I have been scouring for any trace of him. The individual I once knew, who could possibly be the same David, appears much older than depicted in that photo. How long has he been absent?" "He's been gone for about 5 years now. The photo was taken a few years before our falling out." The bartender resumed polishing the bar's surface. "So, what transpired? Why did he suddenly depart?" The stranger shrugged. "I wish I could tell you. David and I were roommates and classmates in college, and I considered him my best friend, at least from my side. We were both studying construction management. He met my sister, Stacy Carter, through me, and they began dating." He paused and sighed. "I cautioned him not to treat my sister casually, and to my relief, he didn't. In fact, she had to ask me to step back when things progressed to a physical level." He finished his beer and signaled for another draft. The bartender obliged, and the stranger continued. "By the way, my name is Henry Carter. David and I graduated, worked in different construction sectors for a few years, then joined forces to build homes. I managed the framing crews, while David handled the finishing touches. From the start, we were a success. Both of us had a touch of obsession when it came to construction. I ensured the concrete was properly cured and the structure was sound, while David meticulously finished every detail. He insisted on flawless seams and invisible joints in the woodwork. His craftsmanship was impeccable, from stair railings to countertops. We never received any complaints about our workmanship. Doors closed smoothly, floors were perfectly level, whether it was a modest cottage or a luxury mansion. Our reputation grew, and we had orders lined up for the next decade. Clients were willing to wait for us to bring their dream homes to life." He paused, taking another sip of his beer. "David and Stacy tied the knot before we ventured into business together. They appeared to be the epitome of a happy couple. Hell, Nicole and I aspire to that level of happiness. But then David changed abruptly. While his work remained top-notch, he withdrew from the camaraderie of the crew. No more post-work beers, no more trips to the bowling alley. Stacy insisted she had no clue what was troubling him. He even started pulling away from her. Then, out of nowhere, he vanished. Stacy had intended to share the news of her pregnancy with him, but never got the chance. Now she's a single mother to an almost 5-year-old girl. The child has never met her father, but I believe David is aware of her existence. He retains a lawyer who sends money every month through an untraceable online service. Stacy has to provide receipts for expenses before the lawyer releases any funds." The bartender nodded as Henry ordered another beer, which promptly arrived in front of him. "By the way, what's your name?" "I'd rather not discuss personal matters without knowing who I'm speaking to." The bartender chuckled. "My name's Samuel, but most folks around here call me Sammy." "Well, Sammy, pleased to make your acquaintance. Now, do you recognize this man?" "Mr. Carter, there's a resemblance, but the David I knew, just David, no last name, looked noticeably older than the fellow in the photo. His hair was graying, and he sported a mustache. When he first arrived in town, we were recovering from a brutal hailstorm, and he was part of a crew replacing roofs, windows, and siding. At some point, he stumbled upon some discarded chairs, which he didn't just fix but restore to their former glory. After that, locals began bringing him damaged antiques to restore. Last I heard, he had a backlog of work stretching at least a year ahead. Henry nodded thoughtfully. He was starting to show that side back home too. I remember when someone mentioned throwing out some mid-19th century chairs, David nearly lost it. He educated the owner on the historical significance of the furniture, explaining how they likely traveled across the country in covered wagons because their original owners refused to part with them. He told the owner it was disrespectful to destroy such a piece of history just because they needed repairs, emphasizing the value they would hold once restored. He paused to take a sip of his beer, chuckling. You know, he did such a fantastic job restoring those chairs that the owner immediately put them up for auction and made a tidy sum. Sammy couldn't help but ask, did that upset this David guy that the owner sold them? Henry shook his head. Hell no. David just figured the new owners would appreciate and care for the chairs properly. He simply went back to work, doing what he does best. Taking a long pull from his beer, Henry continued, Now, tell me, Sammy, did David confide in you or anyone else here in town about why he went on the run? I just can't wrap my head around it. I've racked my brain trying to understand what happened. Did I do something wrong? Stacy's been going through the same thing. Our families have all been trying to piece it together. Sammy shook his head in return. The David who came here was quiet and reserved. He'd stop by for a beer after work and then be off. Every so often, the guys would convince him to join in a game of pool or darts, but that was about it. Even the ladies tried to tempt him, but he'd just point to his wedding ring and shake his head. He paused, reflecting on the past. You know, he arrived here about a year back. Initially, some troublemakers attempted to provoke him just to gauge his reaction. They failed miserably until one evening when one of them crossed the line by groping Emma Johnson, and she wasn't having any of it. By the time the police arrived, 3 of them were nursing various injuries on the floor. David barely broke a sweat and emerged unscathed. He nearly faced arrest, but Emma and the crowd kicked up such a fuss that the charges were dropped. Those 3 haven't shown their faces here since. They don't even bother to check if David's around. They just steer clear and find another place to cause trouble. As Sammy wiped down a glass, he inquired, By the way, how did you manage to trace this David character to our little town? We're quite off the beaten path. With a chuckle, Henry revealed a secret to Sammy. David always leaves a small mark or brand on any furniture piece he repairs. A new resident in our town was giving us a tour of his house during a housewarming party, and I happened to comment on a particularly fine secretary desk. He proudly shared its history, how he discovered it in an old barn and had it expertly restored. He couldn't stop raving about the craftsman who revived it and where he found it. That's when I checked the back and found David's mark. It led me here. I hope he's still around, but I've pursued other leads before, and he's usually moved on by the time I catch up. Once, I missed him by just a few days, but typically, he's been gone for several months. He gave Sammy a hopeful glance. So, is there a chance David's still around? Sammy continued to polish a glass, appearing to ponder deeply. Well, I haven't seen him around here for a few weeks. You might want to ask around. Someone might have spotted him. He tends to keep to himself. He's got an old beat-up pickup and a sizable trailer where he keeps his tools. He could be out at one of the outlying ranches, working on something, and not have the time to swing by for a drink. Setting down the glass, Sammy leaned on the bar. Now forgive me for prying, but why exactly are you looking for him? Hasn't his wife divorced him for abandonment? Wouldn't she then be entitled to half the business, leaving you to carry on? Henry remained unfazed. It's a bit more complicated than that. When we drew up our partnership agreement, we included clauses to safeguard the business in case of divorce. So, my sister would have to take legal action to force us to sell the business and split the proceeds. Without David present, I couldn't sell even if I wanted to. His attorney has a limited power of attorney, so he can't authorize any sale or modification of the agreement. He motioned for another beer and took a sip as it landed in front of him. When it comes to divorce, we've encountered the same issue. After about a year, Stacy filed for divorce as she had begun seeing someone new. They went to court, and the judge ruled that since David was consistently sending money, it didn't constitute abandonment. Just because David couldn't be located for the serving of papers wasn't sufficient grounds for divorce. We hired a private investigator in a last-ditch effort to find him, but it turned out to be a costly and fruitless endeavor. It wasn't until I stumbled upon the occasional piece of furniture that David had restored that we had any luck. Sometimes Stacy and Amanda, his daughter, pursue leads, but most of the time, I'm the one traveling. However, sightings of David have been few and far between over the years. Henry took another sip of his beer, trying to maintain his composure, though the alcohol was starting to cloud his judgment. I know it sounds selfish, but I also want to find David and implore him to return. I can't find anyone else with his level of attention to detail and skill. While I'm still managing, it's not at the same level as when David was handling the finishing work. His expression grew solemn. Have you heard the story of the small church in the desert that lacked stairs to the choir loft? Sammy shook his head. Well, this church was completed without access to the loft. No one knows why. Perhaps the choir used a ladder, given the limited space for a staircase. There were efforts to find a carpenter to install stairs, but either there was no interest or no funds. The idea languished until one day, an old man with a donkey and a few tools appeared. He asked for no payment but requested complete solitude to do his work. When he finished, he and his donkey vanished back into the desert. The staircase he created is a marvel of craftsmanship and engineering, made entirely of wood without any visible support. Each step winds elegantly, and each stringer is carved from a single piece of wood. No one knows where the wood even came from. Henry leaned back. That's the kind of craftsman David is, and I want him back. The dialogue continued as Henry questioned other patrons about David. Unfortunately, none could provide any useful information. They all recalled the quiet man with graying hair and a mustache. Some mentioned that their David would go a couple of weeks without shaving, resulting in a salt and pepper beard. Henry seemed doubtful, insisting that his friend and brother-in-law was always meticulous about his appearance. His hair was kept short, and he was consistently clean-shaven, even after long nights working on furniture. After ordering and devouring a large cheeseburger with fries for supper, Henry approached the evening crowd with similar inquiries. Yet, no one could confirm if David had moved on, and no recent sightings were recalled. A few patrons even left the bar briefly to check, reporting back that David's pickup truck and trailer were missing from the last spot that they remembered seeing them. Henry remained until last call before being assisted to the nearest motel for some much-needed sleep. He had consumed a considerable amount of beer throughout the afternoon and evening, anticipating a substantial headache in the morning. Sammy couldn't shake the feeling that Henry wouldn't stick around for long, especially after confessing his need to return home and complete some housing projects. With the housing market beginning to decline, he couldn't afford to have capital tied up in unsold houses, especially those lacking David's renowned finishing touches. After locking up, Samuel poured a couple of beers and set them on the bar. A slender, older gentleman emerged from the kitchen and settled in front of one of the brews. Samuel initiated the conversation in hushed tones. You caught all of that. The older man, with a stooped posture and an aura of weariness, nodded. Suddenly, he straightened up, shedding years right before Samuel's eyes. It was as if he was casting off a heavy burden. I don't understand why they continue to search. Sure, the partnership agreement poses a challenge, but it's not like he's sending money to a stranger. It's his sister, for heaven's sake, not mine. She's entitled to her share of the profits that would rightfully belong to me whether I was involved or not. You know, David, you've never disclosed the full story to me or anyone else in our small town. Why not unburden yourself for once? The bartender-client confidentiality will be upheld. No one will hear a word of what you confide in me. David shrugged. Perhaps you're right. I've kept silent for over 5 years. I suppose it's time to share with someone. He let out a heavy sigh and took a sip of his beer. Well, to start with, I've always had a passion for working with wood. My grandfather gave me a whittling knife when I was just a kid and taught me how to carve. Every time I stayed with him, we'd sit together and uncover the hidden wonders within a block of wood. Sammy raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by what was hidden in it? David chuckled. Well, each piece of wood has its own character. You might begin with a specific idea in mind, but sometimes the grain doesn't cooperate. So you're faced with a choice. Either discard the piece or work with the wood to uncover its true potential. Sometimes I'd set out to carve a bird and end up with something entirely different, like a car or a snake. There was even a time when I intended to carve a simple penguin and wound up with an eagle with majestic outspread wings. Grandpa would critique each piece. Some ended up in the fireplace, but most were oiled up and displayed on the shelf. I visit that old cabin every year or so, hoping to find some of his piece within me. David took another sip. Every year, we craft wooden cars, trucks, and trains for those in need. Wooden dolls didn't seem to bring much joy to little girls, so I started making dollhouse furniture, sometimes for 12-inch fashion dolls. I still do that come Christmas time. Samuel nodded, recalling the gifts in the community box last Christmas. While no one knew for certain where they had come from, he and a few others had their suspicions. I was convinced you were behind those toys. We hadn't seen anything like them for years, and even then, they weren't as meticulously crafted as yours. David shrugged nonchalantly. It's just something I enjoy. I spend my evenings in the trailer, carving away. The wood sort of guides me, and I just chip away until something emerges. Samuel couldn't help but shake his head. It was hard to fathom that the intricate carvings were merely the result of removing the unnecessary bits. Oh, and about that staircase story Henry mentioned. It's true, but I'm nowhere near as skilled as he made it out to be. That was a fluke, really. They still can't figure out what wood was used, let alone how it was crafted, David added, taking another sip before continuing. I guess deep down, I always knew I'd end up in construction. There's not much demand for a wood carver these days with all the machinery and CNC technology. Machines can do far more precise work for a fraction of the cost, bending the wood to their will. I couldn't charge anywhere near enough to compete, even with the quality I put into my finish work. He sighed deeply. College was my pathway to understanding the business side of construction. I already had the skills from my high school apprenticeship. All I lacked was the knowledge of how to turn it into more than just a means to earn a living. Henry and I crossed paths when fate made us roommates. Since our hometowns weren't too far apart, we often shared rides home during holidays and breaks. It was on one of those trips that I first encountered Stacy. She was a high school junior back then, a classic cheerleader type, you know. I was smitten, but I refrained from making any advances until she graduated a year later. When she decided to enroll in the same university as us, we made sure to introduce her around campus, ensuring she was treated well by everyone, especially the fraternity boys. We both took on the role of protective big brothers. Despite my desire to date her, I made myself wait until she had the chance to explore life a bit more. After a brief pause, he continued his tale. Then, during her freshman year, one night, she confronted me, demanding to know when I planned to ask her out. She'd grown tired of waiting. That's when we officially became a couple, and we've been inseparable ever since. After I graduated, I found a construction job in the same town as our alma mater to stay close to her. We shared a cozy apartment just off campus until she completed her teaching degree. Samuel couldn't resist asking, "And what about Henry?" Well, we had extensive discussions about our future partnership, but we knew we needed to establish our reputations first. Henry headed back to his hometown and landed a job with a major company as a framer. He worked on both commercial and residential projects, gaining valuable experience and swiftly rising to become a crew supervisor. Meanwhile, I followed a similar path with a smaller company, focusing on finish work. On the commercial side, my boss initially wasn't thrilled with my meticulous attention to detail, thinking it slowed things down. However, once he realized that our clients weren't lodging complaints about shoddy workmanship, he eased off. David shook his head, recalling the next part of the story. After Stacy graduated, we tied the knot and relocated to her hometown. Since it was just an hour's drive from there to my own hometown, my parents weren't too upset about me not returning home immediately. My grandfather was still alive, and his small cabin was only a couple of hours' drive away. Stacy loved visiting there, immersing herself in nature while Grandpa and I spent time carving. I was truly content. Our married life was fulfilling in every way. We were adventurous, exploring different aspects of intimacy to discover what we enjoyed. And there wasn't much we didn't like. But things started to unravel when I got the urge to delve into furniture restoration. Samuel's raised eyebrow prompted another question. So, what happened with Henry and the company? Henry and I took the leap and started our own company, just as we planned, David began. Things started off slow as we built some speculative houses, but the new owners were thrilled with our workmanship. Word of mouth spread, and before long, we had a steady stream of work lined up for years. Then there was this guy who tried to toss out some antique dining chairs. You know what's the weakest link in a dining set? Shaking his head, Samuel replied, "The chairs. Tables can take more punishment than chairs. As the chairs deteriorate, it becomes increasingly difficult to find matching replacements. Too many people don't realize the value of those remaining chairs and just toss them instead of repairing or restoring them. Sometimes it's something as simple as a rung or a leg that renders the chair unusable, and it ends up in the trash." This guy, who had just bought one of our homes and was singing praises about our craftsmanship, was dragging the chairs to the curb as we spoke. I pleaded with him to let me fix them, and after some persuasion, he agreed. Once I restored them, he sold the whole set for a premium. It didn't bother me much because someone else would cherish and use that set for many years. Suddenly, I found myself in a new career, and it took off. I was working every evening and most weekends just to keep up. Stacy supported me at first, but she started complaining about the lack of us time, even though every customer praised my restoration work. Samuel poured another beer for David, who nodded his thanks before continuing. We had discussed having children, but as our personal life deteriorated, it became less of a priority. I spent more and more time in the workshop just to avoid arguments. Looking back, I realized I was wrong. I thought I was helping people and still being the partner Henry needed. I couldn't understand why Stacy wasn't in my corner. She started going out in the evenings. The first time I confronted her about it, she yelled back that she wasn't going to sit alone at home every night, wondering if I'd ever call it a day. After my grandfather passed away, I didn't even take weekends off anymore. We were just fighting all the time. Even a trip to the grocery store turned into a battleground as we refused to compromise on anything, not even the brand of milk. Sammy felt compelled to ask the burning question. What led you to leave so abruptly? David took another sip before responding. It wasn't sudden at all. The moment I knew it was over was when the power went out while I was finishing up a house. We didn't have a backup generator. I had sent the rest of the crew to another site to do some sanding and painting, while I worked on the trim. I require ample light to make precise cuts and fit them seamlessly together, so I decided to call it a day early and maybe give my wife some attention for once. It was summer, and she wasn't teaching, so she should have been home. And she was just not alone. I found her in bed with the high school football coach. He was still in great shape from his NFL days, but I gave him a beating before tossing him out of my house. He paused, then took a deep breath and continued. Stacy pleaded for my forgiveness. She ranted about how I had emotionally neglected her, so she sought companionship, which escalated into a full-blown affair. She claimed she didn't love him, but it was all excuses. I moved into the small apartment behind my workshop, and at her insistence, we pretended publicly that we were still happily married. I hoped we could salvage things, but I made backup plans just in case. I started putting my earnings from furniture restoration into an account she couldn't access. I also told her that our business with Henry was struggling a bit, and I diverted some of those earnings into the furniture account. It worked for a while until she brought it up at a family gathering, and Henry inadvertently undermined me by denying any business slowdown. "Why didn't you just divorce her?" Sammy inquired. "I looked into it," David replied. "But she could force the sale of the business to claim her share of my stake, which would hurt Henry. Without children, we'd have to sell the house and the workshop to divide assets evenly. I'd have to start over elsewhere with my side hustle. Then I overheard her telling her boyfriend on the phone that she might be pregnant and would name me as the father, either tying me down for good or demanding hefty child support. That's when I revisited our partnership agreement, set up my attorney with power of attorney, and a spending account for the baby. I left behind my wedding ring, cell phone, and new pickup, and simply walked away. I knew I could find work in construction almost anywhere. I didn't bother changing my identity or hiding too well. I just moved from town to town. With such a vast country and countless people, if you're cautious and avoid drawing attention, you can blend in for years. What about the branding on the furniture? Isn't that a risk? Sammy pressed. David shrugged. It's a small risk. Most of the furniture I restore stays local. There's no shipping involved since I'm not buying and selling. Occasionally, someone who moves away might praise my work, but if I move a short distance, the risk decreases. I'm truly humbled that no one here tonight exposed me. Even though many have seen me recently, they've all silently agreed to stick with your story that I've been absent for some time. No one even informed Henry of my whereabouts. They simply confirmed my absence. In fact, I've rented an old warehouse on the outskirts of town, and my rig is parked inside. I walk wherever I need to go. If Henry sticks around long enough, I'll have to make a decision whether it's time to move on. But with interest rates on the rise and the housing market showing signs of flattening, I doubt he can afford to stay and even investigate any gossip he might hear. Unless he's been diversifying his investments beyond real estate, he needs to finish and sell houses as quickly as possible. I hope he can weather this inflationary period, and I also hope interest rates drop again soon. I harbor no ill will toward him, but even if I were there, it might not make much of a difference. What about your wife and child? Sammy asked. Regarding the child, she's not mine, despite what the birth certificate says. Stacy and I hadn't been intimate for some time before I caught her in bed with her boyfriend. She knows it, but she's kept it a secret because her parents are staunchly conservative and fundamentalist Christians, favoring the Old Testament over the New. That's why she hasn't publicly disclosed the reason for my departure. My attorney keeps me updated. Stacy is afraid to date or even go out with friends to avoid disappointing her parents. Her boyfriend actually left town a couple of years ago to pursue other interests. Maybe my influence played a role in his decision. My attorney assures me that as long as I continue making reasonable child support payments, the judge won't grant her divorce petition. Since the judge shares similar beliefs and is connected to my in-laws' church and happens to be my attorney's uncle, I don't foresee any changes in the status quo for a while. I stopped making payments on the house, but she can't sell it, so she has to scrape by to keep a roof over her child's head. Surprisingly, my in-laws aren't aware of my role in the marriage's breakdown. I sent them a letter after leaving town, informing them of Stacy's infidelity and asking them not to reveal their knowledge to her. Taking some responsibility for the marriage's failure, I send them money to lend to her to keep up with the house payments. In 10 years, the house will be paid off. Samuel persisted. Aren't you being cruel to your wife? You've essentially trapped her, preventing her from moving on. How long do you plan to punish her? Samuel, let me pose a question to you, David countered. Have you ever seen me with another woman? Since discovering my wife's infidelity, I've been serving the same penance as her. If I ever develop feelings for someone else, I'll instruct my attorney to forward the divorce papers and set her free. Until then, or until she confesses her sins to her parents and decides to move on with someone else, we're both stuck in this purgatory. The realization dawned on Samuel, evident in his expression. You still love her, don't you? David nodded sullenly. That's my burden. Despite all the years of toiling away, washing dishes, cooking, doing construction, and despite what she did to me, I still love and desire her. I refuse to denigrate her, even after her betrayal. I may be labeled a cuckold or a pushover, but that doesn't change the fact that I still hold love for her. Why not swallow your pride and return home? Accept the child as yours and reclaim your life? Samuel suggested. A few times a year, I'll send her an email from a disposable account. Her responses are usually filled with anger towards me. Never once has she apologized for her actions. She shows no remorse. She's tried to guilt me by saying our child misses her daddy, but I shut that down by threatening to reveal the truth about the child's paternity to her family and friends. Although she signs off with declarations of love, her messages betray her words. She's unrepentant, and we both continue to suffer. David finished his drink. I'm not happy, but I'm not unhappy either. I make enough to get by, albeit frugally. I send money back for Amanda's care and save for the future. I'm content. Even if Henry were to return now and try to force me back, he wouldn't succeed. That's one of the freedoms of living in a free society. You have obligations like taxes, but no one can force you to live where you don't want to. I'm free to assist after a storm and then move on. I'm free to restore antique furniture and free to find love again if I choose. David rose from the bar. Good night, Samuel. May peace be with you. Perhaps we'll meet again, or perhaps not. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.